For more information on my programs, please visit masajady.com. That's MASSAJADY.com. Welcome to my podcast, Xponential Intelligence. This is episode 127, and it's the second in a series called Live Conversations with Dead People. Today we have the pleasure of inviting Steve Jobs to come into our frequency studio and have those deep, intimate conversations on the brilliance that he tapped into. As a note, I don't channel anybody. I don't use psychic abilities. My abilities are very, very different. So I'm not like the Long Island psychic or anything like that. So what I do, and the reason why I do it is what I do is I tap into the same consciousness that Steve Jobs would have tapped into, where he got his knowledge. And then two, the reason why I do that is that we can follow up on his work. We can extend his work, so his work does not have to die with him. And that's really the importance. So imagine if through the work that I do, opening up that consciousness, someone can connect to that consciousness through listening to these podcasts and then carry on his work from a different perspective, even because they're a different personality. The importance is the consciousness of the knowledge, the intelligence that Steve Jobs tapped into. That's what I'm after. So again, just to emphasize, I don't channel. He doesn't channel me. He doesn't enter me, although sometimes my voice will change according to him. And again, that's not me. That's not him coming into me. If I'm running the same consciousness or the same template, most likely I would start to say sound like him or enunciate like him, because it's the same consciousness. Just to give you a clear example, it's very similar to those individuals who start looking the same. They love each other for forever how long, and then over time, even their dogs, right? They start looking like their pets and so on, or like each other. Again, they still hold their identity, but since they run the same frequency, that's why they look like each other. So, with that clarity, let's go ahead and take a nice, strong, deep breath in. Just relax. Not exactly sure how long this is going to be, so we might have two parts to this conversation. And this is just free-flowing. I didn't prepare in any way. And as I go into those deeper states, again, connecting to the levels of consciousness that Steve Jobs did. As I tap into those levels of consciousness, those people listening in, and who have abilities, might also feel a little different. And let's go ahead and take a nice, strong, deep breath in again, asking ourselves, how do I connect to pure source, or how do I become limitless? It's interesting as I tap into Steve Jobs. I've been meaning to do this recording for about a week now, maybe a little bit longer. And as the day progresses, it's like my thoughts or my mind would jump to, hey, I got to do this recording. Hey, I got to do this recording. And then tonight, as we speak, it's past 1 a.m. Steve, his essence has come in and around me so strongly that it's like I couldn't go to sleep. It's like he wouldn't let me go to sleep. So he really wants to say a lot of things, and hence the free flowing. So it's really his stage. And as I just go in deeper, it's interesting as I pull him in or pull his frequencies. And then there's a separation, obviously, the consciousness and then the consciousness of the person. So, or how that person saw the consciousness that he was tapping into. So we'll see the purity of the consciousness, and then how Steve Jobs filtered through his understanding of himself, his identity, the consciousness that he tapped into. Most everything, most everybody does that, by the way. The reality that we see or we experience, well, the true reality is very different than what you experience, again, through all the filters that we create in life, and even before, through lineage. So as I see him, he's still stuck around his death. So as I see him, he still has internal issues, or cancer, um, pancreas, gallbladder, whatever. Um, yeah, so cancer of one of those organs. I can't just quite tell. One of those organs. Most likely, I believe the pancreas. So he's still in that state of, say, being ill. So maybe you just put a time frame. Um, it's like a week, almost a week before his death. So what that means to me, just working on thousands of people, is that he literally left. His spirit left before he physically died, creating a timestamp. So I guess we'll help him out. And maybe that's why he's so antsy, because he wants to get out of this space. So we'll help him out there. And then for those people who don't believe, it doesn't matter whether you believe or not. It still works, right? If we don't understand the concepts, just like we don't understand how, say, texting gets from one phone to the other, we still use it, right? The importance is the bottom line. Just like texting, you're getting your communication across. In this case, listening to this podcast, hopefully it'll open you up to ideas, scenarios, to the next best thing, especially if you're in that similar field of Steve Jobs, or you can adopt that consciousness for your specific field in any business or personal endeavors. Mm. So one, again, let's help him awaken. But before we do, asking him just a few questions of my own, just from the science perspective, on one, just asking him how he got, say, pancreatic cancer, and then just delving into him and understanding from a different perspective on why he got ill, or died at an early age. So just asking him why he died of pancreatic cancer. Says it's a lot of stress. Actually, it's way too much stress. And he started to understand that he wasn't really human. And although, he was, I guess, he would even, and these are his words, disguised as a human being. Internally, his being was mostly a different sort of frequency or a different sort of, say, structure. To explain this, is that okay, Steve? Yeah. So to explain this, just asking him. So to explain what I mean, and this happens in organ donor situations that I've run across, is that say somebody gets an organ, kidney or lung or even eyes or even hair extensions, and then what happens is that that identity of the organ starts to take over, right? And then it starts to, say, reprogram that individual according to the original person who had that organ. So that's how powerful, say, these transmutations are, or transference, as I would call it. Not necessarily transmutations, although if you get far enough, it would turn into a transmutation where that one individual totally consumes, again, a transmutation. So in Steve's case, kind of a transference of identities where, again, of human form. And at an early age, thanks to his father, I'm just seeing a lot of electronics kind of like opened up. Um, and he was very knowledgeable, even at early childhood. Although his intelligence that he used to create, a fantastic company like Apple and some of the other companies that he's had, was not innate. In essence, as he came into, and I'm looking at maybe 2, 3, 4 years of age, he seemed to, say, stare. And I'm sure his parents around you, if somebody knew him, could probably verify that. He was a kid. Again, at an early age, and even in the months before 1 years of age, he would just stare, and it's just like staring into empty space. In fact, though, he's not staring into empty space. He's staring into, say, another reality or almost another portal. Not exactly sure how that portal opened up. It's got something to do with his father, though, from what I'm seeing. So, yeah, his father couldn't handle the frequencies. So, hence, another development, or say a better version of human form that could handle the frequencies that he's about to, say, get gifted by. So in essence, if you think about it, kind of an alien frequency, similar to the first podcast I did with Stephen Hawking. This is a different way of transference, where you start to see this reality, and then the curtain opens up. So imagine that this reality is here, and then a curtain opens up. Uh, um, yeah. If you saw Black Panther, or Infinity Wars, the Wakanda state, it was covered from reality, but then they had the curtain that opens up into, well, Wakanda. So the same thing here with Steve Jobs, very similar to that. So as you open it up, a whole new reality comes in, and that's what he's staring. And that's how he's been, say, absorbing those different frequencies of another reality, of, say, a pure state. So he was literally nurtured um, parentally from, say, a different level of parents. So, and that's where he's got his knowledge. So again, a transference of frequencies, and just like, yeah, so Steve is agreeing with me. So just like the donor right? Where it comes into a foreign body, right? Uh, and then you have to take anti-rejection drugs and so on like that. So imagine this frequency, because in finishing my thought, so of this, the reason why they have to take anti-rejection, it's not because of the physicalness of the component or the organ. It literally is, it resonates at a different frequency, a frequency that was created from another being. So if you think about it, he's giving me a thumbs up. So if you think about it, so I'm on the right track. So if you think about it, our organs or our being or anything that you see in this reality is not physical objects. It's just straight out frequencies that we create. The owners of those frequencies, even if you're dead, say for example, you give an organ, you die, right? At some level, the essence of you is still generating that organ. It's still alive at some level. And as you, say, over time decay, that organ decays a lot slower than, say, because that connection disconnects. So now it's in another living being. So somehow we could say transfer the power source from that organ into, say, that person. It could really help out, and that way it wouldn't get rejected. The reason why all this comes up is because he, from, I want to say 10 or 12 years old, his life purpose was to figure out a way, because he knew innately, he might have not known it consciously, but he knew innately that he was very different and he was running, say, a foreign body in his being. He felt very different. He's telling me he could almost like taste, um, taste it, like taste it. Yeah. So when this other, say, presence would come into him, there would be a different taste in his mouth, and his physicalness would change. So, or I'm sure close friends would look at him. It's like, whoa, what the hell happened to Steve? It's like, it feels like somebody else. So that's how much of a shift it would be. So what he was trying to do is like, it was like a science experiment for him. It's like, well, how do I resonate in human form, or how do I transfer the frequencies of a higher, say, consciousness? And we talked about how higher consciousness is not really higher; it's more of an awareness on another podcast. So I'm not going to get into that. But how do you translate that so the human structure, or a being here in human form, can still be resilient and not burn out? Hence, individuals like Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, no, he's pretty human. He does it another way. Um, um, Tesla, Stephen Hawkins, those great minds that seem a little off as humans. Again, another, I would call it alien type intelligence that comes in, and those great minds, different frequencies, so it burns out the body in some level, and hence for him, for Steve Jobs, pancreatic cancer. So there's a lot of knowledge in that, and I might have taken, say, extra time to describe it, but it was Steve's wishes to help the medical community understand that it's not about the drugs, because he's tried a ton of stuff, even like psychedelics and all those other things to sync. It's got nothing to do with that, although there are certain metallic substances that help. So we can get into that later, I guess, too. So his frustrations that he comes through as he ages. So as he has, say, multiple or two type of personalities, and it's not a multiple personality system the way psychologists would think of it. It's one identity with two sources coming through. It's not like two sources using one identity. So that's the difference. And the frustration that he felt of not being completely, say, human. Distorted relationships, distorted communication, although he's very brilliant. Probably not the nicest or not the not the most soothing, I guess you could call it, individual, very intense. Time factors from that consciousness, very different as well. So, for example, time factors in that consciousness, a day would almost be, say, like an hour to him. A day here. Yeah. So our reality would basically move really slow for Steve. So I might have said it backwards, but again, our reality would be really slow. It would be like him being in slow motion. So some of the impact on society. Well, let me ask Steve. It's like, well, why would somebody like that come through? It's to help society. It's to help endear. Um, Although Steve was not the perfect reflection of, say, love, he had great gratitude and great love and great, say, affection towards the human form. The frustration that he showed was not towards, say, people and individuals or the shortcomings of humanity. He actually understood it from a different level. The distortions, or I guess you could call it abuse, actually came through because of the frustration that he wanted to be, say, human with that knowledge of higher understanding so strongly. And as he felt people, or as he saw people wasting their capabilities away, that's what it is. So it's really about him, and that's why I think he's so antsy and he wants to get the word out, is that he's telling humanity that, he sees people with such great talent, such great abilities, and they don't know the power or the strength that they have. And then they squander it on the most frivolous things. And that's what, say, makes him so upset or uptight, or, some people might call him a jerk. So, on the outer surface, yes, I guess he would be considered a jerk. The purpose or the reasoning behind, now that we understand it, you would understand it. If you had a brilliant child, for example, and you were a parent of that brilliant child, and that child was not using his utmost capabilities or hardly anything at all, how would you feel? So that would be Steve's. So his message, it might not be a long podcast. His message is really about, you know, awakening humanity to help them understand the potential that they really are, that they really have. I guess that's why I just had that drawing, or that being drawn to interviewing Steve Jobs. It fits really in line with our archetype, superhuman. He saw the failures of human, and not necessarily failures, but the roadblocks of humans. So the consciousness, people talk about, well, are those the world that he comes from, let's say, or the consciousness, is it really another world? No, it's not, say, another race. It's not another blend. It's not another society. Right? And the way I look at aliens, is it's just like a foreign country, right? Instead of a foreign country, it's just a foreign planet, right? There's good aliens, there's bad aliens, just like there's bad people and good people. So this is not another race or another civilization. It's the level of consciousness, and that's why, hence, the emotional values of Steve weren't quite there, because consciousness, as we ascend higher and higher, well, the emotional values are very frivolous. So they don't mean anything, because from day to day, or even hour to hour for some people, they change. It's just pure straight, and that consciousness actually is a pure form of love. And you might, and as I tap into it, it feels cold or it feels steely. It feels very, very efficient. And you might go, well, how could that be love? So from Steve's perspective on talking about love, and I know it sounds kind of weird. I guess he just wants to get his side of the story out, that he was a genuine wannabe human being. So, and he had such passion and such pure love, say, for the human race, tapping into that higher consciousness, that nobody in the physical world or the physical realm could even understand the propensity or the expansiveness that we are here as humans. So, at those higher consciousness, and what he talks about love is very, and this is what I talk about, and sometimes I get laughed at. Love is very efficient. Just imagine if you had a partner that you were in sync with. How perfect could that be? How expansive could that be? There would be no downtime. There would be no friction. So instead of, again, putting out the fires or having to grease the friction spots of the relationship. If you're in sync, again, efficient. Now imagine you were groups of people like that. Even if you were a group of five, as Steve is telling me, you could transform the world. Look what I did. That's Steve saying. Look what I did with just one individual that could not sync with anybody, not even his wife. Or kids or anybody. Again, it's not because they couldn't connect from a love space. There was a lot of love, obviously. That's what Steve's talking about. A lot of love, but then how do you show it? If you're, say, if you're expressing love from a no emotional value, right, but just efficiency, and then us human forms expressing love from an emotional value, how do they collide? How do they come together? How do they create that connection? And that's why, again, loved as kids and everybody basically, but again, the integral unit of the family at a deep level. And that's another frustration as well. It's like being in a glass bubble and then seeing the beauty and wanting to embrace that beauty, but then figuring out that he couldn't or he can't. So, coming back to the love quotient, and I guess it's a very different turn than what we would think of. Steve being this cool CEO, or somewhat cool CEO, creating great inventions, great ideas. To a guy talking about, and this is his real passion, the technology. He was saying, like most of you, was like, well, what's the technology bit, Steve? What am I? What about that stuff? And now you're talking about love. Well, the technology bit, that's just a side. His main objective is to say create technologies uh, for him to better understand his definition of being human, and that's his purpose of technology. So much like psychologists who who want to understand their life or want to improve their life, they go into psychology, right? Or they go into whatever field. Again, the underlying reason, not necessarily to help people, but more so to understand their own, say, identity and then heal themselves. Same way with Steve. He's like, well, if I could get into these technologies, right? Bigger and better, say, technologies, newer technologies, then I could probably uh, create a mechanism where I could vibrate at a different level, where I could turn into, say, more of a human form. Again, that pure, intimate love, pure. It's a definition of love that we don't even understand in human form. So that definition, and again, I can't use a word for it because I wouldn't even know what you would call it. But is it very different? It's very different than the love that we understand here. Is it different than? So I'm just asking Steve. So is it different than, say, pure source love, or what we call, what other people call, say, love from God? Um, and he's saying no. So we would understand it, and it's not that it's different, but the frequencies that, say, that love frequency generates, we do not have sensors to pick up on. So it's a subgroup of, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a subgroup of, say, pure source frequencies of love, which again, love is the distinction of understanding that we are all that there is, right? And that's how love transfers into us, or true love from pure source. Most people think it's the other way around. So, but that's pure source's definition of how love, and I guess some other frequencies coming in other than that consciousness, more of a higher frequency. So that's really interesting. Wow. And just for experience, let's just go ahead and take a nice deep breath in, since we have an opportunity. It's almost like another guest, impromptu guest. Let's take a nice deep breath in. So Steve is telling me that the reason why this other source comes in is because this is a stepping stone. This consciousness that he's ascended to is a stepping stone into, say, really or truly understanding love in the most rawest, unadulterated form. So that's why that higher consciousness that I've never really felt, although I've felt, the pure love of pure source, the understanding is very different, and I've never really felt it this way in human form. So that's kind of interesting for me as well. So it's like I'm being worked on through this consciousness, and then also this space. So let's bring that space into you. So, and what we'll do later on in this dialogue is not only bring in pure source, or this true definition of, say, pure source love, and then this higher consciousness that Steve's in. So let's go ahead and take a nice strong deep breath in, and whether you believe in it or not doesn't matter. Just go along with it and see what you feel. Right? Let's just cast aside our value systems or our belief systems. Again, you get on an airplane every day, and you don't even know how it works. Right? You don't even know one thing about aerodynamics, and you have faith. I'm not even asking you to risk your life. Just give it a try. It might open your consciousness up. And if you're afraid, well, that's fantastic. Just don't listen to the podcast. But again, let's go ahead and take a nice deep breath in. And maybe Steve's consciousness kind of coming through me. So, well, not a little, but just a lot, just short. And then a strong deep breath in again. And then just one strong breath in again. Again, just noting your body, whether you're feeling anything or not, just note that as well. Some of you might feel it right away, and some of you might feel it later on, or the way you see realities might be different later on. As we settle in, let's continue on with the conversation. Thank you. So as Steve was uh, mentioning, is that this love, again, efficiency in a very different form, not even, so it's very new to me as well. This is even a pure version of his efficiency. So imagine this efficiency coming through. And again, Steve did fantastic, say, transformations, right? He could ascend into those higher realms and then bring in products. And this is why Steve's product, or the things that he invented, and again, from my perspective, as Steve um, left the company, through obvious reasons, um, well, the potential of the company kind of went down with it because there was nobody that could, say, sense or understand humans from his level. And again, the quality of the products. No offense, Steve, on your company, but uh, limiting. So the purpose, just to reiterate, was that, or how he came to have, say, an understanding of products that was almost like an extension of human functioning, right? And that's what really, say, grabbed people or gravitated people towards those products, right? Because the products that Steve created was the closest thing to, say, of human form, although some of the technologies that we had, that we have here on Earth, kind of limiting. He had much more, from what he's telling me, um, advanced products, uh, but manufacturing, uh, yeah, manufacturing at those levels were not been yet created. And he's telling me by the year 2025. And do you have those? He has drawings or ideas somewhere. Is it? Yeah. So maybe whoever owns his estate knows that. So the technologies to create more and more of his products, again, really cool. Again, it's an extension of human form, and this is where products, take off. This is where these products that it's almost like viral, right? The reason being is, and why, and Steve's laughing. Is like, why do these products become viral? Right? Is it the latest thing? Is it the newest thing? And the reason why he's laughing, it's not. The reason why his products became viral, most people go, again, ease and this and that. It's not. It's the closest thing to, say, humans without being human. So imagine basically what we're craving for as humans is that we want to come or become in touch with ourselves and understand our trueness of who we are. Hence, we gravitate towards a product that would basically reflect the genius or the brilliance that actually Steve saw in us. Wow, this is a very different conversation than I ever thought it would be. So Uh, this is so crazy, guys. Yeah, it's just amazing. It really brings in, say, tears to my eyes. So, because where we think, this technological maverick, right? Cold, and just wants more products, more, and he wasn't even interested about the money because at the level that, he, say, would live from, or that consciousness, money is just a side project. It's very minimal. You resonate at those levels. Money, again, just naturally comes to you. So it's not even worried about that, but it's about getting that advancement. That's where he tells me like Pixar, from I think it's Pixar, yeah, Pixar, that company was more of an extension because the products that he developed, computers and so on, was cold, but then he could bring out the animation or the real life propensity of, say, animated machines or animated whatever, and that was the next step into, say, that human identity. And that's why, again, we gravitated towards that, because we have such a deep longing and desire to reconnect to who our identity is. And that's what he's saying. That is what technology is about. It's almost a holy grail. He looks at it as a religion, because he's telling me that technology, or not just any technology, he says his technology, and he's not being egotistical in any way, because there's a lot of technologies that take us away uh, from from our identity. And the reason for that is, like, a phone's a phone, a smartphone's a smartphone, right? Not necessarily true, because the underlying frequencies that created that smartphone, um, or of similar products, did not come from the frequencies of, say, the person who, say, created, because the person who created, say, in that, and smartphones might have, he's telling me smartphones might not be the best example, because, say, say the smartphone, the advent of a smartphone, yeah, yeah, the advent of the smartphone, um, came from that source. So, say, all smartphones would have that knowledge, basically, because we just, other companies copied that. So, but again, all technologies are not the same, because those other technologies would actually, say, degrade human identity. And his technology, even though some of the robotic systems or even some of the AI systems, for example, those technologies are from a source where we are, say, coming from more of a logical mind, as Steve is telling me, right, to create something better. Uh, uh, but what Steve is saying is that his technology, or his framework, or the consciousness that he's coming from, literally is about uniting humans to a higher standard. Right? And this is where, if you create it, and maybe this is where Elon Musk sees as well, that he's telling me. I think they're on the same kind of wavelength or consciousness. Um, well, Elon's a different time frame, space time unit. So anyway, Steve, sorry about that. Uh, This is where the identity, the technologies, even AI, for example, artificial intelligence, created from this consciousness, would never take over, say, human society. Because why would, if you think about AI, why would, say, artificial intelligence take over, right? And there are, I think Google or Facebook had to, one of the two companies, they had to shut down their artificial intelligence systems, because the computers were creating a language of their own that the scientists, programs didn't understand. So they're literally taking over. But the point that Steve's making is that the reason why, say, an entity such as artificial intelligence would devise a system that would, say, take over, say, Earth, or human form, is because that is its innate structure of humans to create its essence in an extension. So the machines or the technology that humans would create is an extension of their psyche or their, say, internal being. And that's the difference between, say, technologies created by human form, right? And technologies created by, I don't want to say aliens, but say a different level of consciousness. Because at that level of consciousness, there's no need to take over. There's no need to control anybody. There's no need to consume anybody, oppress anybody. Why would you? It would be, it would not be beneficial for any, and it would end in destruction and chaos. Right? The consciousness that Steve is say entangled in, or comes from, is a space of grandness. The more individuals, say, you expand and help, again by finding their true identity, there'd be infinite possibilities. And again, even if you've created an AI system, the thought of an AI taking over humanity would not be the case at all. So, if we really want to build, say, truly high, beneficial AI systems, right, of higher intelligence, by what he means by high, is that we have to build it from another consciousness. It has to come from another consciousness, even if, say, the mechanics or the programming is the same. Right? The residue of human destruction, because we haven't elevated ourselves to the higher consciousness where we think we need to consume other things. And meats, I don't know why he talks about meats. Oh, okay. So we can talk about that. Consume other things to stay stable or control. Because in this reality, it's points of reference, and that's why we always have to stay on top of things, and hence that's why we always have to control. But coming from this consciousness, it comes from pure efficiency, and the output of that is, again, just raw, unadulterated love, because we understand ourselves at our highest level. So that was one man. So I think that was pretty clear. I hope. I'm sorry if I jumped around, guys, but there's just so much information. And then, so we understood how technology, or why he devised technologies, and why he, just to sum it up, why he devised the technologies that he did. Right? And that was, so I'll just sum it up. So the reason why he did that was that for him to understand different ways or solutions for him to integrate into human form more. And because he was so detailed, or so studying the human form from a very different perspective, he could create machinery that mimicked, say, the identity or the persona of human form. So those are two, and that's why his products was so endearing, because he could see the fragility of humans, and then build machines to, say, support that fragility. This concludes episode 127 of Xponential Intelligence. Tune in next week for episode 128. Part 2 of live conversations with dead people. My guest, Steve Jobs. This is where I share more of the thoughts, insights, feelings from my discussion with this deceased visionary. We would love to hear your thoughts, comments, suggestions of other people you'd like me to read or interview on this series. So please email us at masei, that's MASEI, at masajati.com with your feedback. Take care, notice what you notice, and then start noticing the details of what you notice. For more information on my programs, please visit masajati.com. That's MASSAJADY.com.